Imagine this. You've built a fantasy race. They have tusks, big ones that never stop growing, and then you gave them a warrior culture. But here's the thing. If your race has tusks that never stop growing, tusks that curve back towards their own skull if left unchecked, then their entire civilization should be impacted by that one biological fact. They should have tusk carvers, tusk shapers, maybe tusk priests who decide what shape is sacred and what shape is shameful. That is not a warrior culture with green skin. That's a culture that could only belong to that body. And most fantasy races are just humans in a costume, and that's a shame. The biology ends up being decoration, and your consumers will feel it. Whether you are a game master or a book writer, it doesn't matter. They might not always be able to say why, but the race feels hollow. And the question is actually very simple. What is it like to be them? Because if your race experiences reality differently, then everything changes. Their survival changes, their gods change, their politics change, their art changes. Treat biology as part of their environment. An environment builds culture from the ground up. By the end of this video, you will have a system, a real one. You take any biological trait, you run it through the engine, and out the other side comes a culture that belongs to that race. Let's build it. Here's the journey we're taking. First, we're going to look at the body itself. We're going to treat biology like geography, like a desert your race has to survive in, because that is essentially what it is. Then we're going to trace how that pressure builds upward. Survival first, then power, then belief, and then expression, layer by layer. We'll use the WOAC cycle, as usual, want, obstacle, action, consequence, to show you how one biological trait generates a whole chain of cultural consequences. And we'll do it with a real example, so you can see the engine running, not just read the manual. Then we will talk about what happens when your biology meets someone else's biology, and why that collision is where you can find the best stories. And at the end, I'll give you a 6-step workflow you can run this afternoon. Chapters are in the description if you want to jump around, but I would recommend watching it in the right order. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Biology is environment. The culture engine starts with environment. Geography, climate, resources, and threats. What the world gives you, what it takes away. But it is speaking from a human perspective. It is very easy to miss something crucial if you are building different races. Your race's body is their first environment, just like it is for humans. Before they ever see a desert or a mountain or a rival kingdom, they are already living inside a set of rules, constraints, and capabilities. Things their body can do that no other body can. Things their body needs that no other body needs. Their body is the lens of their world. Everything else gets filtered through it. This is the key. Think about it this way. Humans are diurnal. We're awake in the day and we sleep at night. Our eyes are built for sunlight. So what happened? Darkness became scary. In almost every human culture on Earth, mythology, religion, fairy tales, darkness means danger. Darkness means evil. Darkness means death. That's not a conscious choice. That is essentially a biological output. We are afraid of the dark because we literally cannot see in it. Our bodies made the decision for us. And then our cultures built entire theologies on top of it. So before you run a single cycle of the engine, you need to answer one question about your race. What does it feel like to live in this body? Forget questions like, what does it look like? Well, that is cool and it's awesome to design stuff like that. But when it comes to making your race believable, it's way less important. Focus on what it feels like from the inside. Write down 3 things. What does this body give them that humans do not have? What does it cost them that humans do not pay? And what does it make them experience that humans simply cannot? Those 3 answers are your entry points. So in short, the body is the first environment. It shapes what they need, what they fear, and what they're capable of, before the world even gets involved. Chapter 2. Running the cycle on survival. Now we run the engine. Let's use a specific race. I want you to see this working in real time. Meet the Veth. They live underground. They have no eyes and they're completely blind. But their echolocation is so precise they can map a room in milliseconds. And they feel vibrations through their feelers with extraordinary sensitivity. They feel the world through the ground. Their lifespan is 40 years, shorter than humans. That is the biology. And now we ask, what does it feel like to live in this body? The world is sound and vibration. Silence is not peaceful for the Veth. Silence is terrifying. And they live fast because 40 years is not long. Now we run WOAC. 1. The Veth need to navigate underground tunnels. Obstacle. Visibility is 0. They don't have vision. Threats can come from any direction. And their echolocation works on sound they produce. But making a sound in a predator-rich environment is dangerous. So as an action, they develop micro vibrations, tapping rhythms through the stone floor. Low frequency, hard to detect from a distance, but readable by other Veth through their feelers. And as a consequence, communication becomes physical and rhythmic. Language is not spoken, it is tapped. And because it travels through stone, it carries farther than any voice. Now watch what that one consequence built. Layer 1 on survival. They move in coordinated groups. Scouts tap danger patterns. Leaders tap gathering calls. The floor is their communication network. Layer 2, power. Who controls the rhythm controls the group. The most precise tappers, the ones who can send complex messages quickly and clearly, become leaders. Not the strongest or the oldest, but the most articulate in the tap language. Layer 3, values. So clarity of communication becomes a core virtue, because ambiguity can actually be dangerous. Saying something imprecisely could get your group killed. Honesty and precision are not just polite. For the Veth, these are ways of survival. Layer 4, world view. The world is alive when it vibrates. Death is silence. The cosmology involves a living stone, a world body that hums with meaning. The worst thing that can happen, cosmologically, is the great silence, the void that swallows sound. And layer 5, expression. Their art is percussive, their music is rhythm, their architecture is designed to carry vibration. Certain chambers are sacred because they resonate perfectly. So that was one biological trait and one WOAC cycle, but you already have 5 layers of culture. And none of it was arbitrary, right? Every single element traces back to their body. And here's how to apply this yourself. You pick one biological trait from your race, run the 4 questions, 1 obstacle, action, consequence, and keep it tight. So 1 paragraph per step. Then look at what the consequence touches. Which cultural layers does it affect? Write those down, and that is your first cycle. Then run 2 more. Then look at what you have. Survival strategies will come first, and everything else is downstream of that first problem and solution. Chapter 3. Stacking traits. Real biology is obviously not one trait. It is a system of traits. And those traits don't always cooperate. And maybe you've already been doing what I talked about earlier. Chances are you stopped there. You run 1 trait, get a cool culture, and call it done. But the most interesting cultures, the ones that really feel alive, have internal contradictions as well. Values that pull against each other. Because the body itself contains contradictions. Let's add a second trait to the Veth. They reproduce slowly. 1 offspring per pair, once a decade. Population growth is nearly impossible, so 1 bad generation or a plague or a cave-in could wipe them out permanently. Let's run WOAC. 1. Protect the population. Every individual is irreplaceable. Obstacle. Their survival strategy requires scouts, individuals who go into danger first, who make noise to map threats, who absorb risk so the group can move safely. Action. They develop a caste of voluntary scouts, individuals who choose the high-risk role. This choice is ritualized. It is the highest honor in Veth society. Consequence. A culture of chosen sacrifice emerges. Not forced sacrifice, chosen. The distinction matters enormously because coercion now is shameful and volunteering is sacred. And now look at the tension. Trait 1 said precision and clarity are virtues. Ambiguity is dangerous. And trait 2 now says sacrifice is sacred. The individual who chooses risk for the group is the highest expression of Veth values. That creates friction. Because the scout who volunteers for danger is by definition making a choice that introduces uncertainty in a group's plans. They are choosing to be the unknown variable, the one who breaks the pattern. So how does the culture resolve this? Maybe they don't. Maybe that tension is permanent. The eternal argument between the precision councils and the scout orders. Maybe every generation has to renegotiate what it means to be brave versus what it means to be responsible. And that argument is your story engine. Now here's something important, and I want to be direct about it. Biology sets the constraints, but it does not write the answers. Two groups with identical bodies can build radically different cultures, depending on which problem they decided to solve first. The Veth could have solved the predator problem with walls instead of scouts. They could have solved the communication problem with smell instead of vibration. The biology creates the pressure. The culture is the response, and there is always more than one possible response. That is where you get to be creative. And this matters because your race should have factions as well. Internal disagreements. Groups within the same species who looked at the same reality and came to different conclusions. That's not a flaw in your world building. That is actually your world building working. Now, there is one more biological variable, and it might be the most important one in the toolkit: lifespan. A race that lives for 5,000 years does not just have more time. They have a completely different relationship with change, with loss, with urgency, and with other species as well. Think about it this way. If you live for 5,000 years, a human is a mayfly. You watch them born, grow, age, and die in what feels to you like a single season. How do you form attachments to something that short-lived? Do you? Can you? What does that do to your politics? And what does it do to your economy? And what does it do to your religion, if death is distant and abstract? So in short, stack your biological traits, find where they contradict each other, and those contradictions are your culture's internal conflicts. Biology sets the pressure, and I think lifespan is a very underused variable in world building. Chapter 4. Biology meets the other forces. We've been running the environment force, biology as an environment. But the culture engine has 5 forces, and biology doesn't just generate culture in isolation, right? It will also determine how your race interacts with every other force. So let's trace the connections, because this is where your race stops being a closed system and starts being a civilization in your world. Biology and power. Who holds authority in your race is determined by who controls the solution to the biological problem. For the Veth, the most precise communications hold power. Biology creates the conditions for hierarchy, and the body determines what kind of excellence gets rewarded. Biology and belief. Your race's gods will look like their biology, or they will represent the terrifying absence of it. Biology and exchange. And this part is where it gets politically interesting. There has been research on cross-cultural conflict, and it shows that a great percentage of it comes from misattribution of intent. So one group's neutral behavior is interpreted as hostile. So let's try and see what that looks like in your world in practice. And we aren't just dealing with different cultures now, but with a different species as well. So the Veth meets a surface-dwelling race. Humans. Bob is an explorer. Bob communicates through facial expressions and tone of voice. 2 things the Veth cannot perceive at all. Bob finds the Veth unsettling. They can never make eye contact. They don't have eyes. They tap constantly. They seem to be having conversations no one else can hear. And the Veth find a surface race baffling. They make enormous amounts of noise, but most of it carries no information at all. They are loud and illegible. And here's the thing. Veth tapping to the surface race, to Bob, it sounds like a drumbeat. Even sounds aggressive and maybe even like a war signal. But the Veth are not being hostile. They're just saying good morning, but Bob doesn't know that, and that misread that one moment of a biological incompatibility is how wars could start. So neither side is broken, they're just using different communication types. So let's run the WOAC on that encounter. 1. Both races want to trade. The Veth have minerals that Bob wants, and Bob has extremely nutritious food that the Veth cannot grow underground. Obstacle. They cannot communicate reliably. Every misunderstanding feels like a potential threat. So as an action, over time a pidgin language develops. A hybrid system that uses both tapping and simplified vocalization. The individuals who master this hybrid become powerful people in both societies. And as a consequence, a new class emerges, trusted by neither side completely, but needed by both sides. And that could be a story in its own already. So let's have a look at biology and legacy, the last connection. And it's a quiet one, pun intended. Your race's biology determines what they remember and how they remember it. So, for example, a race with perfect recall, an eidetic memory, does not have myths. They have records. Their history is not interpreted. There's no room for the comforting revision we humans have. And that probably results in a culture that does not forgive easily. So in short, biology connects to all 5 forces. It shapes who holds power, what the gods look like, and how exchange creates new classes, and what the culture remembers and cannot let go of. Chapter 5, the workflow, how to actually do this. So, you have the theory, and here's the process. 6 steps. If you want to work along, I have a worksheet available for free on both my website and my Discord community. We would love to have you there. The link is in the description. You can do this in an afternoon. Step 1. List 3 to 5 biological traits, not just aesthetics ones. They need to have function as well. Traits that change how the body experiences the world. So sensory range, lifespan, reproduction rate, pain response, sleep requirements, dietary needs. Pick the ones that create interesting constraints. Then step 2. For each trait, answer 3 questions. What does this give them? What does it cost them? And what does it make them experience that humans cannot? Step 3. Run 1 WOAC cycle per trait. 1 obstacle action consequence. Track which cultural layers each consequence touches. Step 4. Find the contradictions. Look at your traits side by side and where do they pull against each other? Where does one trait's solution create a problem for another trait's need? And that friction is your culture's internal conflict. Name it, but don't resolve it. Biology sets the pressure. Different factions within your race will respond to that pressure differently. Let them disagree. Step 5. Connect to the other forces. Step 6 is extract the values. Look at your WOAC cycles, what behaviors appear repeatedly, what obstacles keep coming back, what actions became permanent, and those patterns are your culture's core values. Write 3 to 5 of them down. Then find where 2 of them contradict each other. That contradiction could be used in a story. If you have a little bit of practice in this, you will take 2 or 3 hours every time, but you will have a fully derived culture that is based in biology. A quick note on magic, because someone is going to ask. So here it is. Magic should be treated as biology when it is intrinsic, and as the environment when it is external. If your race produces magic, if it comes from their body or their blood or their nervous system, run it through the culture engine exactly as any other biological trait. It goes into the WOAC cycle as a survival capability with costs and constraints. If magic is external, a force in the world that some individuals can access, it behaves like geography. It's an environmental pressure. Who controls access to it controls power. It creates the same dynamic as controlling a river or a mine. So run it through the power force. The most interesting case is the middle one. A race where magic is partially intrinsic. Some individuals have it, most don't. That's a biological lottery inside a single species. And that lottery can determine your entire class structure. The magic capable become priests or nobles or weapons. The non-magic majority builds institutions either to control them or to be protected by or from them. So the short version is this. If it comes from the body, treat it as biology, and if it comes from the world, treat it as geography. If only some bodies have it, you probably have a class system on your hands. Here's what you've actually been doing this whole time. You've been treating your fantasy race as a problem-solving machine. And you should. A body that encounters a world has to figure out how to survive in it. Every solution it finds is a direct response to what that body needs and what that body fears. That's not just good world building, that's how cultures actually form. Or, at least in part. The Veth do not worship the living stone because it's a cool idea. It still is a cool idea, but they worship it because silence is death. And the stone that hums is the stone that keeps them alive. The theology is the survival strategy, stressed in meaning. Your race's gods, your race's politics, your race's art, all of it should be traceable back to the body as well. If you cannot draw that line, the culture is not built yet. It's just decorated. And here's your one task before the next video. Pick one biological trait from your race you're already building. Just one. Run the 4 WOAC questions and write down what the consequence touches. And then ask, could a human culture have produced this? If the answer is yes, maybe push a little bit harder on the biology still. The goal is to make the race distinguished, right? The body is the foundation and everything else is what gets built on top of that. So go build something that could only be theirs.